Today, we're getting creative with our background, so stick around. Welcome colorists to PencilStash, a weekly show all about coloring. Hit that subscribe button if you're new to the channel, as well as the like button if you're enjoying my videos. Today, we're going to do things a little different. Instead of doing an entire page together, we're going to focus on one element of our page, and today, that's going to be the background of this page from Romantic Country's Third Tale. All through the month of October, we're working on spooky pages, and to me, this one seems very story-inspired, meaning it makes me wonder what this girl is doing in this forest, what's beyond this gate, etc. And we could go several ways here. We could be putting her in kind of a lush garden leading up to a beautiful mansion, or on a pathway towards a formative journey, but no, it's October, so we're gonna make it a little spooky. And I've already prepared our page, coloring most everything except for our background. And just a few things I'd like to point out before we get started is that first I've colored our heroine's cape in a bright red. And I did this because I really wanted her to stand out. She's going to be the focus of our page, and a great way to do this is to choose a bright color that can stand in contrast to everything else on our page, because everything else is going to be dark. It's going to be browns and greens and blues, and red will just be that great pop of color that can kind of stand all on its own. Second is our trees, and I've colored them very dark. Not dark enough to obscure them, but still darker than I normally would. And that is because I really wanted this to be a night scene. And you'll notice that there's a highlight around the edges of our trees. And that's because we're going to have a light source beyond those gates, namely a moon, which brings us right into our tutorial. Now, the moon I want to have in our background should be entrancing. It's got this girl's complete attention. So I think it would be fun to have it in a size that is just ridiculously big. So we're going big, big. And since I'm really bad at drawing circles on my own, I'm going to use the rim of a cup that I have in order to help me with that. And I'm just going to trace around it in a very light gray that will only get blended out later. So don't use a dark color here, just something that'll blend in later. And now that I have my circle, this is just going to act as our reference point for now. We're going to come back and add some features to our moon later, because now I really want to focus on drawing in some dark forest beneath our moon and also kind of in front of our moon, which will act as our foreground. For now, I want to draw in some dark forest both beneath the moon and also in front of the moon. So I'm going to take my black pencil and I'll draw some simple silhouettes of tall pine trees, starting with some long vertical lines in a staggered pattern. These will be the trunks of our trees. Then I'll go back in and draw some kind of wonky branches coming off of these. Now, the looser and more haphazard you are with these, the better. Then we'll just fill in the area below those trees with black, giving the illusion of more forest just beyond these gates. And you'll notice I'm not putting in a lot of effort to color these very darkly, which I'm doing on purpose as I'll be layering to get a nice dark, deep look. Now we'll layer on top of our black, as I mentioned before, with French gray 90%. I'm using a medium to hard pressure here, and you'll see it's not only darkening up our black, but it's also blending it out too, filling in all those pesky leftover white dots. I use my blender in just a few areas to make sure everything is blended out. Now that we have our background trees and everything that would be covering our moon, we're going to go back in and just put some features into it. If we'd kind of done this before our trees, they would have only been covered up in those areas and potentially even changed the color of my black with the layering process. So we're going to go in and do it now. For this step, I strongly recommend you pull up a reference photo of the moon. Some of you may know the moon's features by heart, but I do not. So having a reference photo is really quite nice so that you don't have to kind of guess. And obviously, it doesn't have to be a true representation. I don't think anybody would call you out on it, but having something to go off is extremely helpful. So we'll be using a bunch of French grays to give us our bright and shining moon. And I'm going to use white here at the end to act as my blender. And an added bonus to using the white pencil here instead of our blender pencil is that it gives us that great milky layer to our subject, which I think is a really nice effect when we're trying to get that bright, bright glowing moon. Jumping onto our sky, we're going to first use slate gray to put in some clouds just for fun. And I'll create some long, kind of wide, real kind of horizontal clouds here and there, outlining first and then coloring these in very lightly. And I'll use white again to blend over top of that slate gray. Now for the rest of our sky, the darkest blue in the Prismacolor family is indigo. And I'm going to put a medium layer down first as a foundation. And if I had my one colored pencil wish granted, it would be that Prismacolor had a deep, rich, dark navy blue. But alas, the Prismacolor fairy has not granted me that wish, so we'll just have to get creative. I also want to create a halo around our moon since the edges wouldn't just butt up against our super dark sky. So pick a distance around the moon and just leave that raw white. And I did about a half an inch or so. And taking my slate gray, I put a ring around that where our halo would kind of transition into our darker sky. So again, for now, just put down an all-over layer using just kind of medium pressure onto all the areas of our sky that haven't yet been colored in. Now that that's done, we're going to do it all over again. Exciting, right? But this time, we're going to use harder pressure. Now, for some reason, I find that it gives a much richer finished look when we layer these kind of in that first medium layer and then in a darker layer, even with just the same color, than just one layer of hard pressure would have been to begin with. And feel free to experiment on your own with this since it's very time consuming and it's certainly not fun to color in between those hanging leaves. It's not my favorite thing to do. But this is the way that I have found that I get that nice rich look. Using my blender over these areas as well as where my indigo meets up with the lighter color, I'm using circular or kind of orbital strokes to make those transitions softer, especially the areas around our clouds. Just to deepen some of these sky areas further, I'm going to use black grape in a few strategic areas, which is a purple color. And it'll layer nicely over the indigo to darken it, but it'll still read as blue. Now, you may have noticed that our wrought iron gates got a little lost beneath all the layers of dark pencils that we've thrown on top of it. So let's bring those wrought iron gates back out since they should be very readable in the foreground here. And we're going to use a fine tip Sharpie pen, or whatever you have, a Faber-Castell pen, basically just to go over the lines that the artist has already given us. And personally, I kind of wish that I had a black Sharpie pen that was a little bit thicker than this one, but I don't, so I will certainly make the most of it. I have regular Sharpie markers, but I think that that'll go through to the backside of my paper, and I really don't want to ruin the image on the backside of this one. So again, we'll just make the most of it. We really just kind of want these gates just to stand out a little bit more than they had a moment ago. Okay, that's done. Now for my favorite part of any page, using my Uniposca white paint markers. I just love these things. Any excuse to add some fireflies or stars, I am all over it. And recently I got a new size. This is the 2.5 millimeter size, which I would consider a medium tip. And it's the first time I'm using this, so we'll just kind of see how it goes. And for this, I'm actually going to add in some kind of medium stars with this 2.5 millimeter tip, as well as the 1.8 millimeter. So we're going to use both sizes to create bigger stars or kind of stars that are closer to our planet, and then we'll kind of go back in with the 1.8 millimeter one to create those smaller stars. And the same thing with our fine tip, the 1.8 millimeter tip, doing the same thing. We're just going to fill in, like, the majority of the sky here. I'd like it to be really dark, full of stars. Now, don't press too hard with these paint markers. You'll just end up making a mess. Just a quick dot with the tip and you are ready to go. And for pattern, just try to make this really random. As the more random it is, the better it looks. If they're too equidistant, they just end up looking like polka dots. So the more random, the better. And for even more fun, we'll put some of both size dots over the ends of our long stems here, just to kind of act as kind of some abstract flower petals. And that's it, we are done. In total, this page took me about 6 hours to complete, and it felt like 5.5 of those hours were on the trees. which contain layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of French grays, browns, and black. And all in all, I really like the way that this page came out. It's not your typical Halloween themed page, but I feel that it has all the elements of the unknown, which lends itself to our spooky month of October coloring pages. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial today. If you did, hit that like button. It lets me know that you're enjoying my content, and it also helps new folks find my channel. I'm also really interested in what you guys want to see video tutorials on, so leave me a comment down below if you're looking for something in particular or have any suggestions. If you'd like to check out the rest of my coloring tutorials, hit that video jump here on your screen, or check out the entire collection on my channel. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you guys next time.